Hi, I'm Kimberly Miller with the Palm Beach Post, and I cover weather, environment, and climate for the newspaper. We are doing a special Facebook Live today to talk about tropical storm, actually Hurricane Dorian, and it became a hurricane at 2 p.m. today. I'm just going to pause because I'm not getting any, it's not moving. Sorry. Sorry, technical difficulties. We weren't going to do this today. We're going to wait till tomorrow, but there were some significant changes in the forecast overnight that we wanted to talk about and give you a chance to ask questions about. So Hurricane Dorian is now forecast to be a major Category 3 hurricane on Florida's doorstep on Monday, Labor Day weekend. I'm also going to talk a little bit about hurricane supplies, storm surge maps, and how to read the hurricane forecast cone, which seems pretty straightforward, but it has a few pitfalls that can lead you astray if you don't know what to look for. Okay, so if you're just joining us, I'm Kimberly Miller with the Palm Beach Post, and we're doing this Facebook Live today to talk about Hurricane Dorian and its potential impacts on Florida. So please ask questions if you have any. Again, we weren't planning on doing this, but overnight there were some significant changes to the forecast. We went into yesterday as Dorian being a tropical storm, but now it's supposed to be a potential for a Category 3 hurricane on our doorstep Monday. Now let's look at the interactive map of Hurricane Dorian right now. And again, it became a hurricane at 2 p.m. today. So it is skirting San Juan, but yesterday at this time it was a tropical storm, with the official forecast had it ramping up to a high-end tropical storm off Florida's coast. This is the interactive map that you can just find on the Hurricane Center's forecast. And if you look, you can zoom in and actually click on the day. This is the 120-hour forecast, so the 5-day forecast. It has it off Cape Canaveral about with a 115 mile per hour winds, which is a Category 3 sustained 115 mile per hour winds and wind gusts of 140 miles per hour. So significant change there in the forecast. It's supposed to be become a major hurricane somewhere north of Grand Bahama. So when you look at the forecast cone, one of the things you want to look at is the center line is there, and you don't want to follow the center line, right? That's what we always are told. Because the hurricane tracks outside the cone about 30% of the time, 33% of the time, and it can go anywhere in that cone. So this is a really big cone at this point. It's about a 200-mile error rate. So everywhere here from Savannah basically to Homestead is in the cone. So everywhere, Jacksonville, Daytona, West Palm Beach, Miami, you got to be watching this the next few days. This is a very uncertain forecast. It's, again, I said this yesterday, it went from, you got to watch it because these small storms, and this one's getting bigger, but the small storms can intensify rapidly and can die rapidly. But right now, it doesn't look like it's going to die. And here's one of the reasons why. I just threw this in here, so I know I'm totally off my script at this point. But this is Dorian. You see it here in between this dry air. So yesterday it had a lot of dry air in front of it. Now it's moving more northwest, and you can see that it's just got free reign. The dry air is signified by the oranges and yellows. So it is moving into open ocean, warm water, where it can not rapidly intensify, but intensify over that land, and then possibly make landfall, what the forecast says, making landfall in Florida Monday morning. All right, I wanted to go back to where I was. All right, I think we have a video. Got lost track talking about the cone. I think we have a video that talks about the hurricane cone and some of the pitfalls about reading it. Do we have that? Let me watch it with Robert Morieta.
Rely on the cone solely as, okay, this is the area where I need to worry. If I'm just outside the cone, then I'm fine. That's certainly not the way that we want people to interpret this. It's exactly what it is. It's the probable path of the storm center, but does not show the size of the storm. It does not adjust or change sizes based on the size of the storm. It's actually a one-size-fits-all cone. It's the same cone used for every single storm in that given hurricane season. So for example, for this hurricane season, the cone that we're going to show for every storm will be the exact same size. It's not going to adjust or expand or contract based on the characteristics or size of that storm.
Now, a couple years ago, you introduced this yellow portion of the cone. Tell us what that means, because in my mind, I'm thinking, well, that's the size of the storm, but I don't know if that's necessarily true.
Well, in some ways, you can say that it's representative of the area of the tropical storm force wind field. So it's the area where the hazardous winds are occurring, somewhere within that yellow area. So you can see, at least at the beginning, right, where the storm is actually at that time, it extends much farther out than the cone does. And if you carry this forward, even like, for example, 2 days out or 48 hours out, it's still the area of tropical storm force winds will be larger than the cone itself. So this is more representative. The area of tropical storm force winds is more representative of the area of hazards. There's more than that, but it is at least a good starting point.
Okay, so that was Robert Morieta. He's the meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Miami, talking about how to look at the cone. And we have some questions. I'm Kimberly Miller with the Palm Beach Post, if you're just joining us, and we're talking about Hurricane Dorian, which could be on our doorstep Monday as a Category 3 hurricane. Jonathan is asking, should I bring in my dogs? Well, Jonathan, it's August. It's hot. So yes, bring in the dogs regardless of whether Hurricane Dorian comes to your house or not. Paula says, if Dorian stays on track, what would the winds be in Jupiter, West Palm Beach? Well, that's a good question, because at this point, this far out, we really don't know. If you look at the hurricane forecast cone, you can see how big it is at 5 days. Look, it goes from, Savannah, Georgia, through to the Keys, basically. Key West is out of it. Don't look at the skinny black line. That takes it to Cape Canaveral. That's the very center. But the hurricane could go anywhere at this point in this cone. Now, that's going to get smaller, of course, as the days go on. See how tiny it is down here near Puerto Rico. So when they, have a better idea of where it's going to track, it'll get smaller and smaller. That's why you just need to keep paying attention. And again, that's one of the things that the National Hurricane Center stresses, that some people will look at this, and if it's not so bad, say you're in the Panhandle or something, and then turn it off. And they won't turn back, and they'll say, oh, we're not going to get hit. Well, keep checking in on this one, especially since it's Labor Day and people are, being distracted by other things. All right, let's just look at this. Is the interactive map again. You can pull this up. It's on the National Hurricane Center's website. If it follows the track, which is a very big if. Now, one of the forecasters said pretty much you can guarantee 5 days out, if you're in the center of the track, you're not going to be there at the end. So we'll see. If it follows this track, on Monday morning, it would be near Cape Canaveral with 115 mile per hour sustained winds and wind gusts of 140 miles per hour. Now, that is going to change, so you just need to keep paying attention to it. All right, Samantha says, when will they narrow the cone? Well, it progressively gets narrower as it moves closer. So this is about, at 5 days, about a 230 mile error rate. I don't know exactly what the error rates are as they come closer, but again, the cone will narrow, but 33% of the time, the hurricane goes outside of the cone. So, and again, if the hurricane tracks to the north of the cone or to the south of the cone, even if you're outside the cone, you're going to feel hurricane force winds or tropical storm force winds with this. Right now, the hurricane force winds, I think, are only extending out about 20 miles from the center. So it's still a pretty small storm, but they're thinking it's going to get bigger as it moves into the to these warmer waters near the Bahamas. Okay, John is asking, when is it expected to reach Florida? It's a good question, John. They've been kind of moving this back, right? So right now it's supposed to be near us Monday morning. Now that doesn't mean that that's when we're going to start feeling the impacts, right? Because we'll start feeling winds before that. I'm just going to go off script because as I answer questions, I'm totally messing up the way this goes. I'm sorry. So we're going to feel impacts sooner than that. And here's one of the things, another good tool on the Hurricane Center's website is the earliest reasonable arrival time of tropical storm force winds. And if you look at this is the earliest reasonable. So it's saying for South Florida, probably Saturday afternoon, we could start feeling tropical storm force winds. And then they have the most likely arrival time. And this is something they put up there. They really like to give this to emergency managers more than, just have the regular people looking at it. Because the reason they say tropical storm force winds is they want you to have your things prepared before the tropical storm force winds hit. So this is the most likely arrival time. And it's saying for southeast Florida, Sunday morning, a little bit later Sunday for North Florida. So that's really when you want to look to be prepared. And then you can also turn on the probability map. This is getting fancy. But this shows you the probabilities of those winds hitting you at that time. So this would be for Palm Beach County, about was 60% chance that Sunday morning we'd be seeing tropical storm force winds at this point. And this map changes too. So you want to keep updated and keep looking at these maps. All right, so we're with Melissa. What does the European model show? Oh, Melissa. Okay, so I try not to look at the spaghetti models so much. I do look at them. Everybody looks at the spaghetti models. I will say right now, the models are a little bit divergent on where this is going to go, and we're going to know better the next couple days. I believe the Euro and the GFS were a little bit different when I checked this morning. But you really want to look at the consensus and pay attention to what the Hurricane Center is. I am a weather reporter. I'm not a meteorologist, and I personally don't feel like I am equipped to judge what each of the models is saying at any given time. So I just listen to the National Weather Service, National Hurricane Center, and AccuWeather and Weather Underground. But I know it is tempting to look at the models and see, is the GFS doing better than the Euro? We like the Euro. It's been more dependable. But the GFS got updated this year. So it's going to be interesting to see how it does, especially in this situation. Maybe I'll write a story later about that. All right, Melissa, you stumped me. Connie, where will it be on Sunday morning? Okay, so again, you can look at the interactive map on the Hurricane Center's website. It's not super precise, but we can look over here. This is the 96-hour forecast. So this is September 1st, which is Sunday, I believe. Is that Sunday, September 1st? I think so. And it's right here, but north of Grand Bahama. And that's at, again, a Category 3, 115 miles per hour with wind gusts to 140 miles per hour. And then again, here it is off the Cape Canaveral, 115 mile per hour Category 3 with wind gusts of 140 miles per hour. Okay, summer. Do we know where landfall will be? Okay, so no, we don't. Look at how big the area is where landfall could be. Everywhere from Savannah to Homestead to the Keys. That's what we're dealing with right now. Look at how big this area is. And that's why you just have to keep paying attention and tuning in. I know it's hard. It's hard to be patient. But we'll have a better idea over the next couple of days as it moves closer about when landfall will be and where landfall will be. And just know that anywhere in that cone right now is fair game. All right, Jim, when do we put the shutters up? That's a good question. We had that yesterday. So again, this is a personal choice on when to put the shutters up. One of the people I speak with at the National Hurricane Center, his rule of thumb is to put the hurricane shutters up when a hurricane watch is issued. And when a hurricane watch is issued, you still have 48 hours to prepare before tropical storm force winds are supposed to arrive in your area. If you want to, there's an editor here who says she waits till the hurricane warning is on, and that gives you 36 hours to put your shutters up before tropical storm force winds are going to arrive. So it kind of just depends on your comfort level. How long is it going to take you to put it up? Your risk, your ability to deal with risk. Are you willing to risk a Cat 1? But again, the rule of thumb for the National Hurricane Center has been put the hurricane shutters up when a watch is issued. Okay, Sue is asking if the cane hits on the East Coast as a Cat 3, will it exit as a Cat 3? That's a good question, Sue. I don't even know. I know we're not supposed to look at the spaghetti models, but a couple of them had it going across the state and into the Gulf of Mexico. What it does there, they didn't really go much further than that. It probably will not exit as a Cat 3. Hurricane Wilma hit as a Cat 3, I believe. It exited as a Cat 1, I think around Jupiter, but that was on the hit on the West Coast in 2005. So normally interaction with land will cut it down pretty dramatically. But again, the hurricane centers will extend this out as the days go and give you a better idea of what it's going to look like when it's in the middle of the state, what the wind speeds could be there. Okay, Jamie wants to know percent or potential for a south shift in its track. I don't know that there is a percentage, like a probability of a track shift. This morning, it was kind of all over the place. At first, Miami was barely inside the cone this morning when I came into work. Then it shifted again a little bit to the south. One of the forecasters I spoke with this morning said we're going to see a lot of shifts in this track as the days move forward. Some of the models did take it off the coast completely, and it's really going to depend on the steering currents. There's a low pressure ridge out here kind of over Bermuda. High pressure ridge, I'm sorry. Low pressure trough, high pressure ridge. And so it just depends on, that's what's kind of steering it right now. And so it depends on where this ridge goes. If it moves closer to the US, then it would steer it more to the left, or it could take it a little bit further out and be something for the Carolinas to deal with more. Okay, Samantha is asking, are conditions favorable for Dorian to grow stronger than a Cat 3? I have not read that. I haven't read that. So one of the forecasters I spoke with this morning from the weather company said that they felt that the Hurricane Center was a little bit conservative in their forecast yesterday, calling only for a tropical storm, albeit a high-end tropical storm with 70-mile-per-hour winds, because a lot of the other forecasters in private industry were thinking it was going to be a Cat 1 or a Cat 2. And then this morning they thought Cat 3 might be a little bit of an overestimate, but I haven't heard over a Cat 3. So, but I wouldn't rule anything out at this point. As it gets closer, we'll know better. But not to scare anyone, but a Cat 3, I have not heard anything higher than a Cat 3 at this point. AccuWeather is saying Cat 2 near our coast. They have it going to a Cat 3 north of the Grand Bahama and then going down to a Cat 2. So again, patience is hard to wait for better information. Okay, Penny, did this pass over the Turks and Caicos? Not yet. And if you look at the path, it steers way clear of the Turks and Caicos. It's way over here. That's one of the reasons why it's going to be able to intensify. It's missing all of this land here. And then going up here north of the Grand Bahama and then into Florida. When will we know when and where this will hit? Okay, so I think we could be potentially in areas of the coast could be in a hurricane or tropical storm watch tomorrow. That just makes sense if you think that 48 hours before tropical storm winds reach you, you get a watch or a warning, or you get a hurricane watch or a tropical storm watch. We're going to know better in the next 2 days when and where this is going to go exactly. So it's hard to be patient. We're just going to have to keep checking the forecast. They'll know better once it gets a little bit closer. Okay, so that's it. That probably didn't answer anyone's question, and I hate to give that as an answer but we just don't know at this point. Again, the cone is huge, 5 days out. All right, so we played the video with Robert Morita. Oh, one thing I wanted to look at. Phil Klotzbach from Colorado State University. He's like a numbers geek, but he's a weather expert too. So he put together all of the August 24th to 31st landfalls in the U.S. And I just thought this was interesting to see where the landfalling hurricanes were and what categories they were between this time period of the year. This was between 1851 and 2018. And then these are the September landfalls. And one of the forecasters I talked to this morning thought it was pretty interesting. He's like, it's very unusual for a hurricane to make landfall pretty much like north of Vero Beach, which this chart kind of proves to be true, at least in August and September. And he said one of the reasons for that is that once you get out of here, like to the northern subtropics, the westerly winds kind of will sweep down and push that thing a little bit further out into the ocean. But then you've got the Carolinas here sticking out like a sore thumb, and so they're likely to get hit. So I just thought that was an interesting thing. Oh, this was another thing about the track guidance. I said earlier that we went to bed and thinking that it wasn't going to be a Cat 3, obviously. And one of the reasons for that was we were all waiting. This was the wild card. Where was this thing going to go? Was it going to thread the Mona Pass between Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico? Or was it going to go over Hispaniola and hit those mountains, which are 10,000 feet? And that would have sheared the storm pretty good, and it may have had a hard time regaining strength. So that was kind of what everybody was waiting for. Well, Dorian fooled everyone, and now it's tracking actually a little bit east of Puerto Rico. And it's not likely to weaken significantly when it moves out into the waters and east of the Turks and Caicos. And this is what Eric Blake, he is a National Hurricane Center specialist, said in a tweet this morning, I believe, about how wrong the models were. He's showing where the center of the storm was and where the models had it going. Okay, so where are we? This is why you have to be constantly checking the forecast as the next few days move along. And another thing, we wanted to go back and look at just, if you weren't watching, oh, here's a picture of Dorian right now. You can't even see little Puerto Rico. It's getting a little bit of a center there if you see it. And then let me see if I can move out at all. This is just the GOES East satellite that you can find on the, you can just Google it. Everyone has access to it. It looks really nice. Aaron here was a tropical storm. It lived for a few minutes, and then it is already kaput, so we don't have to worry about that one. All right. So again, if people were asking us several questions about arrival time, when we might start feeling winds, and I just wanted to go over this again. On the National Hurricane Center's website, there are earliest reasonable arrival times for winds. This is the earliest reasonable arrival time. So for Florida, it shows here, Saturday afternoon to Saturday night. And then most likely arrival time for tropical storm force winds would be, more Saturday night into early Sunday morning. Okay, let's see. Where are we? Oh, storm surge. So one thing that's not even on the Hurricane Center's website at this point are storm surge maps, which are, kind of new. I think they introduced them in 2016, maybe, but I'm sure we'll be seeing them as the storm nears our coast. And we have a video with Hurricane Center Director Ken Graham that talks a little bit about storm surge and what you should be looking for when those maps do show up. And what are some of the things that you can explain for people who are not used to seeing something like this?
Well, and first of all, because we've been able to make so much, effort in making that track better. With a better track, we can do things like this and make a good forecast for the storm surge. Over here is what the forecast was for Hurricane Florence for the storm surge.
And this is what area is this again?
That's what area is. This is in North Carolina, the Newbern, North Carolina. So this was the forecast. This is what happened. Not bad if you look at the two. So this is finally a tool that we have to say, these hurricanes aren't just a coastal problem. The highest storm surge that we saw in Florence was 100 miles inland. That's part of the narrative too. It's not just a coastal issue, it's an inland issue as well. So we can see it. This is where places could potentially get those values of storm surge.
Okay, so sorry. I'm Kimberly Miller with the Palm Beach Post, and if you're just joining us, we are looking at the Hurricane Dorian forecast. Hurricane Dorian became a hurricane at 2 p.m. from the National Hurricane Center's official forecast, and it is now looking to be a potential Category 3 storm at somewhere along the Florida coast Monday morning. So this is something you want to be paying attention to through the next few days. We're getting ready to wrap up, but we have a question from Kathleen, and she's asking if I have ever been in a hurricane. Yes, Kathleen, I have. In fact, one of the things that got me started on this beat was Hurricane Charlie, when a photographer and I went over to Fort Myers Beach to cover Hurricane Charlie, which at the time, 2004, was supposed to hit Tampa. We were really upset. We were like, oh, we're stuck down here in Fort Myers Beach. We're going to miss all the action. So we went over to the island and everyone was evacuating, but it was only supposed to be a Category 2. So we go to this hotel and the owner's like, oh, you can stay. We're rated for a Category 2 storm. Now remember, we didn't have like iPhones then that had fancy radar on them or anything. So we're in the hotel, we're getting our sleeping bags out, and I call the paper and I said, hey, so we're going to stay at this hotel on Fort Myers Beach. It's rated for a Category 2. And there was just silence. No one said anything. And then one of the editors said, Kim, it's a Category 4. And just as he said that, the TV came on and it was a forecast, or probably CNN, saying it was going to be a Category 4. So Gary, the photographer, and I looked at the owner and he was like, get out. He really didn't want us to die in his hotel. So we run out, but by now we couldn't get over the Estero Bay Bridge because it was like so windy. So we found this one hotel that was a new hotel. They let us stay there. We went up the steps and all these people were huddled in this room, and they made us sign a waiver saying that we wouldn't sue them if we died, I guess. And we stayed there through Hurricane Charlie, and it was pretty intense, even though it hit Punta Gorda, which was just north of us. We came out of the hotel and things were on fire. There were explosions going on, and I wish I had the photo to show you. But this poor manatee, had gotten washed up onto the street, and people had rolled it onto this makeshift plywood thing, and they were dragging it behind a truck. And they named it Charlie, and they were chanting Charlie. Anyways, after that, I've been through a few others, but that was the most dramatic, and I've covered several. In fact, went to Hurricane Michael after the storm last year, went to Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. Those are both afterwards. But anyways, that's my Hurricane Charlie story. So we're wrapping up this Hurricane Dorian forecast. Again, it's forecast right now to be a Category 3 off our coast Monday morning. We're going to keep you updated at the Palm Beach Post. We have, as soon as the updates come on, we are updating our website with the most recent maps, the most recent forecast. You can email me at kmiller@pbpost.com at any time, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. Oh, we have one more preparation video. If anyone's still watching, do we want to play the preparation video? If anyone's still watching, we have a prep video on what you might want to have in your kit. Hurricane watch is no time to panic. You still have 48 hours before hurricane force winds are supposed to reach your area. What you want to do is listen to the National Hurricane Center and your local emergency officials. But there are some things you can do beforehand to make your life easier. You don't want to be like her. Hurricane season begins June 1st and runs through November 30th. So if you live in Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, all the way up the eastern seaboard, you want to be prepared. When a hurricane watch is issued, you want to make sure you get gas and money. You can make your life a lot easier if you have a plan and a kit together. These are some of the things I've gathered over the years and things that you might want to consider having in your kit. Wet naps, just in case you're somewhere that doesn't have running water. Light sticks. This is a tiny thermal blanket. It might come in handy if you have to go to a shelter. Raincoat, for obvious reasons. Rain pants. A gallon of water per day per person, and again for 3 days. I also carry a backpack with enough clothes for 3 days. A key thing is having enough light. This is a light and a NOAA weather radio and a charger for your cell phone. You want to have your important documents somewhere safe, like in a Ziploc bag. This might be a little strange, but I packed this. It's a sarong. You can use it as a towel. You can use it if you want to change modestly if you're in a shelter. Rain boots. This is just in case you get in trouble. It's a whistle. It has a compass on it. And I also have waterproof matches. Bottom line is, nobody wants to deal with a hurricane, but you can make it easier on yourself by being prepared. And never underestimate Mother Nature.